Hello, my name is Selena, and I'm a part of the Let's Discuss A Course in Miracles webinar team at the Foundation for Inner Peace. The mission of the Foundation for Inner Peace is to publish, distribute, and discuss A Course in Miracles. And we are holding these Let's Discuss online webinars as an expression of our vision of extending love through A Course in Miracles teachings. Today's Let's Discuss webinar is being brought to you as a live event. We're so happy you're joining us for the next hour and a half. Before we introduce our guest, I invite you to join in prayer. From the text, chapter 2, A Course in Miracles tells us that we can do much on behalf of our own healing and that of others if we think of our situations in this way. I am here only to be truly helpful. I am here to represent Him who sent me. I do not have to worry about what to say or what to do because He who sent me will direct me. I am content to be wherever He wishes, knowing He goes there with me. I will be healed as I let Him teach me to heal. Now, it's time for today's session. And it's called, What is the Course's Plan and What is Your Purpose in It? A Course in Miracles is really such a big teaching. We know that, and it's not uncommon for big questions to arise in the minds of its students about our purpose and role here. So for example, although the Course tells us that we have free will through choice within an already written plan, what does that really mean? Must we consciously practice forgiveness to awaken to our true nature? Or need we truly do nothing? Our companions today are going to help us unpack these subjects of free will, fate, and the role that God, the Holy Spirit, and we play in our lives and practice of A Course in Miracles. It's such a pleasure to have and welcome our guest panelists today. In this webinar, we have Foundation President Tam Morgan. We'll be joined by course students and teachers, Diane Brook Gusic, Alan Cohen, and Alan Braswell. Hello and welcome to you all. Thanks for being here.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Selena, and welcome everyone, and welcome this very large audience today who seem to be really interested in this topic, as am I. I have always said I'm not a course teacher, and so I'm a little out of my league in this one, and I'm really excited to hear what our panelists have to say about this. And I think to start it off with truly getting to answer some of these questions that we said we'd be discussing. The first being, as we wrote, although the Course tells us that we have free will and through choice throughout everything, but there is an already written plan. What does this actually mean? And I'm going to ask Alan Cohen first, because I haven't seen you or gotten to hear from you in a long time, and I'm really excited.
Well, I was kind of hoping to give me an easier topic, but I had to study it to teach it. So thank you. Thank you very much. It's a really good question. So are we destined or is there free will? And the answer is yes and yes. As I look back on my own life, I see that there's a very, very clear role of destiny. I've had events happen to me and interactions and encounters that were completely out of the wheelhouse of my ego. It was something that was absolutely set up beforehand, and I had to play it out, usually for the good, always for the good. And I had to cooperate with it. So what I came up with in response to this question was that my life is a series of destined moments coupled at best with my cooperation. And we have to come back to the intro to the Course, which says that free will does not mean you can establish a curriculum. It means you can only elect what you're going to take at a given time, or that you're willing to cooperate with. So my take on this is that there really, really is a big picture that we have co-created with Spirit. Spirit does not lay a destiny on us. We are as much involved in our soul contracts as Spirit is. And then we get to play it out to the best of our ability using our free will. The Course says that we do have free will. And so you have to make believe you're making choices, even if it's an illusion. when you get up in the morning and you decide what to wear, you can't say, well, this is an illusion. I'm going to let God dress me. And you can't say, I'm going to let God put cereal in my bowl versus oatmeal. So even if free will is an illusion, we have to participate in it. And really, there is a way where it comes together. Zen teaching says there are 38 paradoxes that a Zen master has to resolve, and one of them is free will and destiny. So as far as I could tell, they really are one. When we get to the mountaintop, they really are one.
Great. Okay, since you are one and since you both have the same name, Alan.
Okay, I agree with much of what, pretty much on the same page with my namesake Alan over here. So, this is a subject that comes up a lot in our Facebook group. Let's discuss America. Discuss the Course of Miracles, the Foundation for Inner Peace group. If you're not a member, you're on Facebook, you should join up. We have like 23,000 members there now, and we have lots of experienced teachers there that and students that have lots of good things to say. So it's really good, great to be in it. And we have some policies in place that keep it from the discussions from getting absolutely crazy like they do in some of the other groups. So anyway, you're invited. But the question comes up a lot. The subject comes up a lot on the group. It's something we're all interested in. It's a very fascinating and intriguing subject. That prompted me particularly to do a little research into this about the term script, because that's the term that comes up a lot. It turns out that the word script is actually only mentioned 8 times in the course, and 6 of those appear in a single paragraph in chapter 30, and it's completely a different context, kind of a script for the day, your plan for the day kind of thing. So there's 2 left that really create all the hoopla, and lesson 158 where it says the script is written, that's after the comment about time, and then in I think 169. A little bit later, talks about salvation script. And the thing is that a couple of paragraphs after it talks about, after 169, after the last mention of the script, Jesus, this is one of these deals where he pats you on the shoulders and says, but really, you can't understand it anyway. The exact quote is, there is no need to further clarify what no one in the world can understand. So there's that. Jesus does that periodically through the course. He says, you really can't understand this anyway. Like, who can understand oneness joined as one earlier in the text. But nevertheless, we are very interested in it. It comes up all the time. And we see different interpretations. Some people see it as, oh, I'm just reading this book and it can't change. All it really changes the way I look at it. We see others, the movie projector, idea that we're sitting watching a movie and it's just about our reaction to it. That's been used by course teachers through, and even other non-dualists. I heard Yogananda, read Yogananda write about it one time as well. And there's other approaches as well that go through it. I like to think of it as more of an interactive computer program. Okay. Where there is a basic script, the teacher's manual and levels of teaching. It says you will meet who you are to meet. There are places in the course that definitely say, there's a plan. There's people you're supposed to meet, and there's a plan for your life. Absolutely. But we also know that we can make choices. Definitely free will, as Alan mentioned earlier. That's definitely there as well, because the course tells us, if you make this choice, then you can save 1,000 years. That's like 10 or 12 lifetimes. Sounds good. I think that's part of it. I think that as we're looking at the computer program, if we make this choice, then this, we can, block out this many other things. So I think that for me, that's kind of a helpful way to look at it.
How many times does the word plan come in?
I didn't look that one up. Somebody would have to.
It's hundreds. It's in the hundreds.
Yeah, somebody would have to look that up. But the word script is one of the things that really tantalizes people, though. So that was one that we looked at. Ken talked about in one of his frequently asked questions to the question about the script was that the first issue is that it's not an illusion anyway. Time, and the course says space and time are one, two sides of the same coin. They're one illusion. So we know that the world is an illusion. It says that repeatedly. But so it's all in our mind to begin with, because that makes it a bit more complicated also. So we look for words to express it. So we use words like script and plan. to come
Plan
across that.
does
But
come in 256 times.
there you go. So
So,
that
yeah.
makes that's a good point. So
Thank you, Alan.
anyway,
Great. And
Mhm.
Diane.
At one level, everything has already been written. Nobody cares about that. What we care about is what's going on in our script. But this course is written in an abstract way because it's trying to move us from just being focused on our script to something larger. And I love your quote, Alan, that the course does say, why get involved in it? It's something you really can't understand anyway. However, he gives us hints. He says, in the moment that you thought you separated from God, you wrote out every possible script that could happen, every. And in that same moment, the Holy Spirit came in and answered everything, and it's all over. Now, that's very interesting intellectually, but we still want to come back to our script. Think of my background. I am an old, in many ways, an old astrologer and numerologist. In the ways of the world, in my experience, individual scripts are written at the moment that we take birth. Almost everyone sitting here, and I know it's a large audience, has a major theme that plays out in their life in which they will either be willing to look at it differently or they will continue a script of guilt. Because at the bottom line, the course is saying your individual script was written by, chosen by you, because you think you did something that was guilt worthy. In my experience, once we're born to a particular theme guilt script, I liken it to a ball going down a bowling alley. Once the ball is out of your hands, there aren't endless parameters. I think outside of time and space where we're choosing, I think there are endless parameters. I want to give credit to Ken Wapnick, my teacher, and apparently Alan Braswell's teacher. I'm not sure about Alan Cohen, but it doesn't matter. Ken Wapnick used to say that no matter where you are, even though, and he didn't use ball going down the bowling alley, but wherever you are in your life, the most important thing is there's only one choice you're making in your script. And that's either to cling to my guilt and make somebody else wrong, because if I make them wrong, I think I'm wrong, or to listen to the Holy Spirit and somehow find out how to interpret that without guilt. Ken felt that there were possibilities to change the trajectory of the bowling ball. As an astrologer, I'm not sure that's so, but what I am absolutely sure is true is that each of us in every moment of every day, within the script we've written outside of time and space, is choosing to heal our mind or to tell ourselves we're still guilty by making someone else guilty.
Thank you, Diane. That was beautiful. I am going to bring it home to a more personal level and say that I used to really struggle about free will versus fate as a child, because I had a lot of dreams that came true, and I would try very hard to make them not come true. And they were a certain quality of dream. I'd have it usually before I woke up in the morning. And it had, as a child, I called them my real dreams. And I didn't like them. A lot of them were about accidents that I was about to see happen. And I would, tell my mother, this is about to happen. And she'd say, no, honey, that was just a bad dream. And then it would unfold. So it became a challenge for her as a parent to figure out which was which and to comfort me. But in this, so silly things, for instance, I had a dream where I got a ticket, and I had just got my driver's license, and I was very afraid of policemen, and I was always trying to do the good thing and the right thing. And I called my mother. I was going to San Francisco State for the summer, and I called my mother and I said, I'm driving home today early because I want to be so careful and I don't want this dream to come true. And so I drove home, and she told me to come to her house. And so I came to her house. She had just moved into this place for the summer. And I started to pass a police car where the policeman was outside the car talking to a neighbor. And I looked at him, and I was really careful, and I went really, really, really slowly. And then 3 driveways away, pulled into my mother's. Where my mother was. Next thing I know, the policeman got in his car, he came to me, lights going and everything. And I said, what did I do? Because I was looking at him, it was a street where it had a very rare stop sign. It was a street where elderly people lived, and it had a very rare stop sign right in the middle of the street. So at the exact moment that I was looking at the policeman, I continued and went 2 more 3 driveways to my mother's. Just one example of the things that I would try and do around. I could give dozens of them, but it was very frustrating for me because it was almost like I was given a canvas and I was told, I could change the colors of the paint. I could choose different colors, but the painting was still going to be the same. And when I learned in science class about light particles and light waves, a light went off inside me. And it's, whichever way you're looking at the light and examining it, it's whether it's a light wave or a light particle. If you're looking at light waves, there will be light waves. If you're looking at light particles, it will show themselves as light particles. And so I became intuitively comfortable with that a plan was already written, but that I was allowed to make choices within that. And those choices were very much, first of all, I would give a prayer to say, please only give me a dream in which I can be helpful. I don't want a dream where I'm just going to be going crazy because I see an accident or something happening, unless I could be helpful in it. So that was helpful to me because I would know the outcome of the dream, but I would be able to help people along the way. And I wouldn't necessarily tell them what was coming. I would just be helpful and be present in that. So that was one way I could deal with this, being a puppet to a larger plan. The other is just, as we were speaking about choice and perception in how to perceive the dream. And if I noticed that I would do something, even if I knew it wasn't good for me, guilt producing, sometimes I would do it in a rebellious way. I knew it wasn't in alignment, and I was particularly a teenager and a little older. But to learn what guilt produced and the consequences and effects of guilt around myself and inside myself and people around me, so that more and more I realized, I don't want to choose that path, even though I got to choose that path. So when there was a path that I took that was guilt provoking, it was a lesson. And then I would laugh because I realized that was still in the plan for me to learn that lesson. So the forgiveness came. If I thought I had done something horrible, it's like, I thought that was my choice, but actually underneath it, it was still the plan of this incredible learning to learn to be back in alignment with love and not in the mind plan, the ego plan, I should say. So, we just had an Academy Award sweep of the movie called Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, which I think is in a way what you were referring to, Diane. I mean, it is.
In a way, yes.
In a way, it is all going on at once. So, but there are these choices. You might know that you have to wear a dress or a suit to an event, but maybe you get to choose the red dress or the blue dress or the kind of suit. It gets tricky in the world of form, but it does feel like deeply there is a greater intelligence to all of it that the Course speaks
Mhm.
about over and over, that does guide us, and we can get in more clear alignment with that.
Yeah.
And I think more recently, more than ever, I've heard a lot of youth, all the way up to elders, speaking of purpose in life. What's your purpose here? And I'd love to just bring that up. Actually, we have it in the writing of the question. What's our purpose and role in our own narrative? And, you know, we've talked about who's writing the script here, but what does purpose mean in terms of the Course? We know it's opening up to love, but what else would you have to say about that? And Diane, I was about to go backwards, and great.
Oh, well, good. Then we're on the
Yes.
same page. I just want to follow through on your interesting story of the policeman and put it in terms of the Course as I understand it. The
Great.
Course is saying that God's will is free. God's will is the only will there is. There is nothing else. The only thing that we have here is choice. We are free to choose to go back to God's will and end the experience of guilt in any moment. So you could say that at the moment you chose your particular life, this scene with the policeman was already written. If you chose God's will and you came back, you listened for guidance, you paused, you let the guilt go, then in that moment, you were choosing to align with God's will. And your purpose would have been to heal your mind. And if you decided in that moment to experience it as a victim of the policeman or not looking or anything else, then you would be unconsciously choosing not to align with God's will, and that is our choice. The problem is when people ask about free choice, they're hoping you're going to say, yes, and let me tell you what's going to happen for you. That's not free. God's will is free. The hard work is letting go of the guilt in the moment and coming back to it. That's the work of the Course. It's humbling how many times he says that over and over and over again.
Thank
Yeah,
you,
and I
Diane.
want to kind of comment, please. So,
Absolutely.
you know, at the moment of the policeman coming, you could have chose to be guilty or to laugh it off and see it as an opportunity to forgiveness. And so we'll say that the policeman coming was the fact, but what you did with it was your choice. I'm kind of echoing what Diane said. So what? One of my favorite mantras is "so what." So you got a ticket. So what? So you know, what did you do with that? You finish up the story. So after you got the ticket, what happened?
So after I got the ticket, I guess I was 18 or 19 at the time. I burst into tears, ran into my mother's, said, I got a ticket. And she said, what did you do? And we really talked it through. You know, I wasn't thrilled that my savings was going to that. I felt victim. I felt like, you know, I did everything I could. Why? And then I moved through, and then I got to laugh about it. But it wasn't an isolated experience. It was a string of experiences that led me to looking at things differently, very differently. But I was also, I allowed my ego to express itself at the time. I remember.
Yeah, that's good. But you worked it through with your mom, which I think is a beautiful part. I mean, I've had policemen stop me and end up coaching them. You know, it's like every experience is what you make of it. So isn't that interesting? So stuff happens that's neutral, but we apply not a neutral thought to it. You know, so you made it what you would, and you congratulations on working that through. It's a beautiful thing.
Thank you. I mean, it's not so different if we take the big leap here to, you know, the story of Jesus in the desert, and he saw what was going to happen to him. And he said, no, thank you. I don't want to do that. Why should I go be crucified and, you know, go through that drama and horror until he stepped in and accepted that plan for himself without judgment. without judgment. And it does come in through there. It gives me, just in my own world, an understanding of how someone might do that or choose, okay, I don't care that this next part is going to be very difficult. I'm going to walk through it with love, and I'm going to be in alignment in that way. So, so anyone else have anything to say about purpose and life purpose? Because it really does seem to be a very, very big question, especially for youth in their 20s. What is my life purpose? What is my life purpose now? And I think it's a good topic. My answer is always realigning with love. But I'm clear that's my life purpose. I think the course offers us a way to do that. But what would you each say?
Much as you said, Tammy, it may not seem that exciting to a young person, but really, and it's really in terms of the script as well, there are two scripts in one sense of using the word, the Holy Spirit or the ego script. So we always choose for one of those. The purpose of the course itself is, of course, we know in the introduction, is to remove the barriers to the awareness of love's presence. And we do that through forgiveness by choosing the Holy Spirit, you know, as of course, as our task is to do. So part of the purpose of our life might be said to be to choose the Holy Spirit rather than the ego, which is aligning with love as we go through life.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, one of the lessons makes it very clear. It says, I am the light of the world. That is my only function. That is why I'm here. And Jesus said in the same way in the original Bible, he said, you're the light of the world. Don't cover the light with a basket. So to me, it's pretty simple. I'm here to shine. And anything that helps me shine is in line with my purpose. Anything that keeps me from shining is out of alignment. I have to keep undoing what doesn't align so I can get back to what aligns. It's simple. But you got to practice. That's why you have 365 lessons. It's 1,200 pages. If you got the first sentence, you wouldn't need the rest of them. But I guess we'll practice.
Right.
I think that should be blast out to the world. How clear that is, and people keep thinking that I have come in touch with of that the purpose is external rather than internal. And if we can realize that, it could be very helpful. Diane, do you have anything to?
Well, I was just thinking when you said young people want to know what their purpose is. If anyone had told me when I was a young person that my purpose was forgiveness, I would have said, thank you for sharing, and moved on quickly. Forgiveness it's very hard work. At least I still find it to be hard work, because forgiveness means I originally made a decision that I could make this person responsible for why I'm uncomfortable. I made that decision unconsciously. I don't want to give that up. So for me to have to go inside, this is internal, and look at what's come up for me and know that I'm not upset because of what he did. He did what he did, but that's not why I'm upset. I could see this differently. That throws a tremendous amount of responsibility back on me. I, for one, could not have done it as a young person. There was too much that I thought I could grab from the world to make myself special. I wasn't ready, even when I started the course, to even hear what it was saying over and over and over again, repeatedly. It is a very simple course. You're willing to ask, or you're not. And not necessarily you're going to hear a voice. You're willing to stop the chatter and get so still that all that's left in your mind is an experience of oneness. And from that comes a shift, however much of a shift as you're ready to receive. But it's sometimes like molting the skin from a snake. Sometimes it's easy. I don't want to make it sound like it's always difficult. You practice this over and over, and sometimes I go, wow, I moved through that way more easily than I ever expected. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes we have an investment in being right. It's fun to have a villain out there.
Yeah, and I also think, as we discuss it, I think that there is sometimes almost a semantic confusion between a purpose and a goal, and and they are a bit different. And what's great about the course is if one is goal oriented and purposeful, the lessons a day give us a sense of purpose throughout the day. And then it collects. It's cumulative, that purpose gets felt more than practiced. And then the more we practice it, the more we know it. And the goal for the day for me, when I'm doing the course, is to remember that lesson, which can be remarkably, unbelievably hard to remember that lesson throughout the day. And if I've done that throughout the day, then I feel like that goal has been achieved just for that day, or a goal for a moment, like in the 12-step program, be in that moment of choosing, and choosing to go in one direction instead of another. So in this, that kind of leads us somewhat fluidly to the question on the path to atonement. The course states that the time is set, and must we consciously practice forgiveness to awaken to our true nature, or need we truly do nothing? And what does that mean?
Can I just go back to purpose for a minute, because I had a really exciting thank you.
We are informal.
Yeah, thank you. Because it was a great question. So I think in our youth, in our ego's youth, we ascribe all kinds of purposes to life and goals that we have to exhaust and see that they don't work before we can claim our real purpose, which is forgiveness. I once co-presented a seminar with Neil Donald Walsh, the wonderful author of Conversations with God. And a guy asked him, he said, Neil, would you help me manifest a car? And Neil thought for a moment. He said, I said, this isn't that kind of workshop, man. He said, I can help you manifest peace. And I realized that there's two kinds of workshops. Workshops that help you get stuff, and there's workshops that help you get peace. And I think we have to exhaust our desire to get stuff before we can value peace enough to make that our first priority.
And drama. I will tell you that I used to feel that unless someone was complicated and difficult, they weren't as interesting especially in a relationship, as someone just kind, nice, and wonderful. And so we all choose different, I guess, a different combination of what we find interesting before our peace. And peace, the more we actually start to feel it, and I can only say this personally, although there is a whole course that will promote this, that peace can be very addictive in its beauty and in all of what unfolds from it. And it's as interesting as any complication on the outside in the world of drama that I've ever found. So.
I want to add, guilt can also be an addiction. I think it's the fundamental addiction that we come in sharing, and moving from an addiction to guilt to an addiction of peace. I've never heard it or thought of it that way, but I think it's a great description of what the course teaches you to do, cuddles you to do.
Cuddles you. Note that. Yeah.
Because he's very gentle. He embraces you. He doesn't, when you make a mistake, you never get the sense of you did that wrong. When I make a mistake, I get the sense of, I could choose peace now. How can I see this differently? Whether I'm resisting or not, that much I know. And from there, I move forward. And I think you used the words, I need do nothing. The time is set, so why bother to do anything, is the way I heard that. I don't know if that's how you meant it.
No, but it's brought up for the conversation.
The time is set because all the scripts have been written, but I don't want to know that while I'm living my life. What I do know is when I get quiet enough to be open to another way of seeing, then in that moment, and there is only that moment, then in that moment, I have everything. But when he says, I need you nothing, he's not saying, don't do anything in the world. We were all born, so we think, we were all born into this world. This world is our classroom. We need to do things in the world, but you don't need to do. All you need to do is pause and get that sense of what's right and then do. So it's not that you don't do anything, it's that you don't do anything without sensing the most peaceful way you can do it. Whatever words. For some people, it's they hear the guidance. For other people, they sense Jesus. For other people, they feel the Holy Spirit. For me, it's literally getting quiet enough that I know that my purpose is to heal. And from that, everything else flows.
As you said, with mistakes, when we make mistakes, it's almost the same. Everything with spirit seems to be a wonderful, ironic paradox. And so we talk about our mistakes, and yet we read through the course, there are no mistakes. And it is the similar thing of fate and free will. There are none, but we perceive them, and that helps our lesson in learning forgiveness and letting go, and that this didn't even happen. So the need do nothing, it is an interesting thing to think that there is a moment of our awakening, and that we don't have to do anything to get there, and yet there is a preparation, because it feels like awakening is also an unfolding. It doesn't necessarily happen in one moment where it all arrives, although it can happen in a moment. And if it does happen in a moment, can it be sustained through our sense of time? So I wonder what you have to say. I don't know if I made that question clear enough, but it goes with the do nothing, or, wow, I mean, what people have come to ask me is, well, if it's already set the time that I'm going to awaken and I don't have to do anything, well, let me just go to the bars and let me just have a great time and, do whatever I want until that moment. And that's not quite what seems to be being said. So does anyone have anything to, I mean, I have my own perspective on it, but I'd love to hear from you guys.
Well, when I meditate, which the Course wants us to do as much as possible, in the moment of quietude, I know I need do nothing, because I am whole and I'm filled and I'm enough and I am loved and I'm worthy, and the small self, the salt baby disappears into the ocean, as the yogis used to say. And so to me, in those moments, that's when I understand I need do nothing, because I'm doing nothing and I'm happier than ever I've been when I'm doing something. And then, of course, you open your eyes and you have to pay the taxes and feed your kids and take your kids to soccer and all that. So I like what you said, Tam, about moving through our day with a sense of wholeness instead of sense of emptiness. We're still doing the stuff we do, but we're coming from a place of wholeness and completion. The choice for completion is one of the greatest sections of the Course. What if we can move through our days and be complete, even as we're doing stuff, instead of trying to make something happen that will make us complete? I think that's the crucial distinction here.
Yeah.
I would say I need to do nothing in terms of form. There's not a specific necessarily actions that I need to go out in the world and do this or do that to achieve the goal of the Course, because this is what we're talking about. I need nothing to go home, to get there. It's about the content of our mind. It's about the changing our mind, the willingness to be one with God. But to do that, we have to transcend the barriers. We have to let the obstacles be removed. So I think that's what we do, but it's not something that we go out and do in terms of form. And as we go, we all know that we live our lives here, as it's been mentioned already. But as we go through the day, we do it as we encounter every opportunity of forgiveness, as 1,000 a day. Then we need to choose for the Holy Spirit rather than the ego. So it's about content and not form is the way I see that. I need to do nothing.
Mhm. Oh, go ahead, Diane.
Tim, this may be a slightly intellectual answer, but just bear with me for a second.
Love to.
At the highest level, the Course is saying that time happened in a non-linear instant. We think time, he tells us, you get up and you spend your day by the minutes and hours, and we look at clocks and all that thing. It's so beyond what we live every day, but time and all the scripts are over. I don't find that helpful in my everyday life. But the reason that the time is set for our awakening is it's already happened. And where we have choice is in the moment that we're taking our kids to soccer, or we're doing the dishes, or any other thing that's going on. It's in that, there's a line where he says, the closest that you can come to eternity is in the moment. I'm not doing that exactly, if anyone knows the exact quote, but it's only in the moment that you can replicate eternity. In any moment that we think we're doing something, we are either making noise and blocking peace, or we're open to peace and then going forward. It is a learning process. In my experience, it is still a learning process, and I'm doing this for many decades. I am truly humbled at how far I feel I sometimes have come on automatic pilot, and truly humbled at how far I feel I have to go when I feel resistance. I think we all need to be gentle with ourselves. The Course is written as if it happened in an instant, and maybe it did, but he didn't write such a long book if he didn't realize that we needed a process to get safe enough to let go of our guilt. And the way we know we have guilt is we make a judgment about anyone or anything in the world, because our guilt must get projected out. That's all that's going on. That song about love makes the world go round isn't true. Guilt makes the world go round. Love makes the world feel good. Yeah, that's a song.
Nicely said, nicely stated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Said. I think also, as you said, there is a process, but what I think we've each touched on too is when you stop, when you sit, when you quiet yourself, when you can meditate or just being quiet, which is pretty much a similar thing. That's when you've gone home. That's when you come home and you return to that place instead of the doing. You can sit still and be thinking, and not experience that moment. But also when it comes to choice, I've said this before, and I had a profound experience of feeling like I came, even though people didn't see my mother this way, but I came from two parents who were Aries in their astrological sign and extremely controlling people in different ways. And I feel like I was birthed from those two, and my personality became very controlling, and I couldn't stand myself anymore. One of the reasons I meditate is because I just want to get out of myself, because I'm tired of myself. I get tired of everyone at some point. And so my prayer in meditation was, please, take this controlling aspect of me, take it, get rid of it, do whatever you want. I don't want it anymore. And instead, I was shown two buttons very clearly. One was that red button that's in cartoons that the president can press for war, and all war, all hell breaks loose. And the other was a round blue button that was for peace. And I was told in a downloaded way that my controlling nature, I was so great that at every single moment I got to control which button I wanted to choose and which button I chose to press. And so in that image for me, there is my choice every moment. And it, instead of saying your controlling feature is such a bad thing and get rid of it, it was no, Spirit will use that. Spirit will use that for the good of every move you make. If you make it that simple. And it's no different than the Course. I mean, it is the Course. The Course brought me to that meditation. And when we get to choose what for ourselves in this, and how we can experience going home in one instance of a push of an internal button.
It's an answer to some, as you're speaking, you're describing yourself as a controller with two Aries parents. I'm basically passive. And I think one of my biggest defenses has been, let everybody else do it. And as you're speaking, I'm realizing I also am choosing which button to choose. I don't care what personality you have. Every one of us is choosing which button to choose.
And therein lies free will.
Mhm.
Therein lies free choice. God's will is free.
Right. Thank you for that.
Sorry about that.
Thank you for that correction. Yes. So I'd love to open this up, since this is one of our live webinars, to find out if there are some questions. And Selena, I'd love you to come forward if you can and bring out any questions that you're seeing in the chat. We've had some questions come in, and I just want to answer this one because it was asked in the Jewish tradition. There's a beautiful term, beshert, which basically means fate. It's meant to be. Is that at all similar to the script is written? And my answer is yes. Would you guys agree? Any who know beshert? So
Beshert means the bowling ball has already gone down the alley.
And met with the pins, because anytime I think of two people meeting, you know, like, especially in matchmaking, it's beshert. It's beshert.
Well, I hope that bowling marriage can be more than a bowling ball going down the gutter. Hopefully there's a little more to it. Hopefully you can, you know, even if you start out on a bad note, you can shift it and make a holy relationship out of it.
The analogy of the bowling ball was the life, the plan for that particular.
Got it. I'm just playing with you.
Which I'm so glad you are. So anyway, that was one of the questions. Selena, is there anything?
There is a question that just
Right.
came in through chat. I'm going to pose to you all, so just bear with me for a second while I read it. This is from MMR. In accepting the atonement and doing the forgiveness, I noticed that I'm setting up an expectation for myself that this pattern or thought that makes my decisions is healed, and such things won't happen again, or it will happen less. But I see that in my life, things keep happening, and I keep doing the forgiveness and accepting the atonement. Sometimes I wonder, what is the end to this? Is this how it is? Am I approaching the forgiveness and accepting of the atonement in an unhealthy way? As a course teacher, what do you recommend? I just don't like this or don't want this forgiveness/atonement to be a hamster wheel rather than a joyful journey. I appreciate your input.
Well, true forgiveness is liberating. True forgiveness is what gets you off the wheel. Resistance and judgment keep you on the wheel. And practice. You know, if you're doing something, if you have a pattern, you're attracting the same kind of mate or victimization. So those situations keep coming up as opportunities to go deeper and peel away more layers of guilt, fear, and resistance. So if you're not succeeding at the beginning, redefine success and say, well, I'm making progress. I think I might need to keep doing more of this because I'm not at peace yet. You know, if you're not at, what was that line from the Marigold Hotel? The guy says, if it's not okay, it's not the end. Is that it?
You're not happy, it's not the end. Something
Yeah.
like
So,
Yeah.
you know, if you do practice forgiveness and you're not happy, you're not at the end yet. You got to keep going until you get to the end.
Yeah. Anything to add, oh great teachers?
The questions are coming in, so.
Good.
I do have a thought. I don't know how smiling it's going to be, but A Course in Miracles isn't about, I think most people come in, I certainly came in wanting to make a better life. And it isn't about making a better life, although you probably will have a much better, much happier, much more loving life while you're doing it. But it isn't about making a better life. It's really about recognizing that life is in the mind, not of the body. And that's not something I emphasize when I teach or share, because you never emphasize something that's going to be frightening to people. You want to meet people where they are on the rung of the ladder. But we're speaking as people who understand what the Course is saying. And at its highest level, it tells us repeatedly, you're not a body. All that we are is a mind making a decision. And when you catch on to that, I don't mean you catch on to it and then you have it completely forever, but you catch it and then you go back into life and you catch it. And more you experience that you're a mind making a decision. And it changes the life you think you're living while you identify as a body. Of course, it's not asking us to deny that we're a body, but it is saying, ultimately, we're a mind. That's what we are.
Mhm.
And there is a, the image for me of being trapped in a hamster wheel. Hamsters a lot of times look like they're having a lot of fun in that wheel. And you can, I don't know how to say this well, but you can be in your hamster wheel and enjoy it. And the enjoying, I don't mean even an ego way. I mean, I remember sitting, on we had a little radiator by the window growing up. And I remember sitting on top, it was covered by like a little seat. And my mother would come in and say, "What are you doing?" And I'd say, "I'm really enjoying being sad." And she'd say, "Do you want help with whatever you're sad about?" I was like, "No, I'm really enjoying it because I'm experiencing it. I'm here." So in a hamster wheel itself, it can be the mode for your liberation. I mean, we have a cross, a symbol of a cross, and you can either be, nailed to it or resurrect from it. And so if you see that hamster wheel as something that is preventing you or in the way to experiencing a happy dream, love, then maybe look at it differently, reframe it, even the hamster wheel itself differently, to have it be your gift to open up.
Alan, what would you like to say about this? You have a good name. I want to call on you some more.
Well, going back to what Diane just talked about, it is all in our mind. And as far as the bowling ball hitting the pins or whatnot, one of the things Ken talked about, there's a script, there are multiple scripts, and there's a script where the bowling ball does hit the pins, but there's another script where it goes in the gutter. So there's multiple scripts, and that make so you went, well, how does that work out in the world of physics? There's a multiple dimensions. Do I need all this a very abstract math to figure that out? It's in the mind. It's all in the mind, and that's why it's possible to do that. So it all happened at once. It's done, but a portion of our mind, our ego, our separated mind, is stuck in the stream, and but it's a very convoluted dream, and we can keep looking at this lifetime or that lifetime, or we look at this script or that script that we took. So I think that's another way of looking at that. But the Holy Spirit always has a script that he wants us to look at, and the ego has a script that he looks at. So, we have this, maybe the script where the ego says, shoot them. So we do, and we have a script where the Holy Spirit says, oh, you don't do that. You need to, love, you need to practice love, forgiveness. So we do that. But yeah, so yeah, but it's really, there is a great deal. It is getting off the hamster wheel. Judgment. How many times, I heard this analogy before. How many times have any of us stood in the shower thinking, man, next time I see this person, I'm going to tell them this and I'm going to tell them that, and I've got my plan of how I'm going to, tell them what's what. I've done that before, for sure, But that's the wheel. Okay, getting off the wheel is when you forgive that person, and truly, and you let it go, and then you don't have to do that anymore. So kind of back to what Alan said over here. Anyway, thanks.
And I would just like to add to everybody that forgiveness isn't denial. It's not now I do A Course in Miracles and I can't have judgment, because that's stuffing it. And that's the last thing the Course would want us to do. Forgiveness is really recognizing there's a process to getting out of your ego. You look at it, you own it, you recognize you're not upset because of what's going on out there. You're not denying what's going on out there. You may have to take care of what's going on out there, but I'm not upset because of that. And then I ask, how can I see this differently? When I say ask, I mean make a space for another way of experiencing this situation. And then I come back out and take care of business. But the charge and the blame and the judgment is no longer what's fueling it. It's not a denial of what took place. It's owning that I still have a choice. Nothing was done to my mind. I still have a choice. And that is tremendously empowering for all of us. And sometimes we don't want to do it. Sometimes it's absolutely terrifying to realize that I could let go of even this and be peaceful, because that will prove to me that I really am a mind and not a body. And oh my goodness, I've identified with this body and this story for quite a number of years. So that please don't underestimate the resistance to doing this, because throughout A Course in Miracles, he tells us, this is scary to you. Don't expect to just go on a straight trajectory. We don't, unless you're a born saint.
Yeah. And there's a piece in this that it's bringing up, and it's not directly relevant to the question, but it's as we're talking about the script versus the plan, and versus, and not even versus, including the narrator. By trade, for years and years, I was a writer, and to write stories and to narrate one's own stories, when I first heard, okay, I have to let go of story. I have to stop being so attached to story. It's like, well, wait a second, that's my profession. How could I possibly do that? And the deeper and deeper and deeper I got into my own spiritual practice and using the Course, realizing that it's different. Don't necessarily have to give up the story. It's identifying. It's where our identification is. If I identify with the story, in my world, and we're laughing about, help me manifest a car or a parking space or whatever. In my world, there were lots of times I got so into the story that I was writing that it would start to come true in real life. And then I'd have to be careful about the story that I was writing, because I didn't want certain things to happen. And that started to inform what I think. So the power of what I think is still narrating. What do I want to choose in my thought? And then that gets me separate. I can be neutral about the story, leave the story for entertainment out there, but identify with the I am of something other than story. And I don't know if that's helpful or not.
Well, let's accept that we all have a story. You can't not have a story.
Right.
You're in the dream, and we want to turn it to the happy dream, of course. And one of the most fun and powerful exercises I do in some of my workshops is I ask people to say, what is your old story that you'd like to let go of? And what is the new story you'd like to replace it with? Mm-hmm. And this empowers people, because they still own their role as the narrator of the story, but they also recognize that I have a choice about which story I can tell. Do I want to cling to the old one that really hasn't worked for me very well? Or could I choose a better story, a happy dream that's going to work for me a lot better?
Yeah. And there is some, even in the terms of addiction to thought, there is some safety in an old bad story.
Yeah.
At least you know it. It's not new and uncomfortable. And so much of us are afraid of the unknown, especially in this culture.
Well, the motto of the ego is maintain the status quo at all costs, even if the status quo sucks. And you have to get that the old story sucks before you can choose a better one. So yeah, you're right on there. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the text concludes by reminding us to, brother, choose again and make a better choice this time.
Yeah.
Mhm. It also reminds us at one point in the lessons, now forget this course. And
Yeah.
forget everything we've said and walk fully into God. So
There's a line in the course where he says, resign now as your own teacher, for you have been badly taught. And every time I read it, it
Well,
stops me short.
I think we have to give Jesus a lot of credit having a good sense of humor.
yeah.
Because in this very serious, thick, abstruse text, he comes up with some really good zingers. One of my favorite lines is, you cannot be your own guide to miracles because it was you who made them necessary. Duh. Well, thank you for lighting this up, sir. It makes it a little easier.
That's how, for me, I know when I'm in alignment with the spirit, is because there's always some humor in it. And usually the joke's on me, actually always the joke. But the moment I get it, then I kind of say, okay, here I am. This is truth. So Selena, you have some others for us?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so questions are coming in about the script. So if you all wouldn't mind, we can unpack this just a little bit more. Here is a question from Liz and a couple of others that may follow just after that. Let's go with this first. We are taught that the script has already been written, yet we are told that our outer world is reflective of our inner world. So how would changing our thoughts change our outer lives if the script has already been written? And then just an additional question, can one alter one's script through forgiveness? Just as you're marinating in this, it's sort of still in the
Diane's
same
not
vein.
marinating.
I know, she's ready.
I'm going to marinate in a second when the Allens talk, but can you alter your own script through forgiveness? I can only tell you that I had 3 relationships in my life that when I started the course, one was my mother, one was my father, and one was my husband who's going to be watching this. Oh, well. And I remember saying to myself, this sounds like a really good course. I will never do it with my mother, my father, or my husband. I mean, I truly believe that. It sounded really good psychology. Before both my parents died, if the course did nothing else but help me to heal with my parents, it would have been so much more than enough. But I think both my husband and I would say that my doing the course, and he is not a course student or interested in it, has totally changed a relationship that was going in a very different direction. So can you change your script? It is an entirely different experience. That doesn't mean that stuff doesn't come up. It means it's an entirely different experience. So now I'm going to marinate in the Allens can talk.
But here's
Something to
one
say too after the Allens.
Yeah, well, one other point to add on to all of this question, different person, but same line of thinking. So with all of that, is our script being constantly rewritten if we choose forgiveness more than the ego? And does this cause us to wake up from the dream faster, or regardless of what we choose, our time of awakening doesn't change? So leaving that all with you.
This is getting a little too complicated for me. I think we should just keep it simple.
Now let's go back to the other ones.
And
first.
say that forgiveness works. And if you don't believe it, try it and see what happens. And absolutely, you know, when I've released people I've held judgments against, something in the outer world changes. The first time this ever happened to me, I was living in a house in the country with 4 guys. We were like 4 hippie pot smokers, and it was a very conservative neighborhood. And the neighbors did not like us. We had big parties. And this lady next door just kept hassling us and hassling us. We just had a terrible relationship. And I went to a lecture one night, and the lecturer said, take somebody you're not getting along with, call them to you, and take a moment to just, you know, connect with them, see the good in them, just like them for a moment, just let them be. And this woman showed up and I just released her. Okay, you're a really nice lady. Sorry we bugged you. Let's get along. The next day I was in my garden and this lady walks up to me. She says, I realize I haven't been a very good neighbor, and let's start over. And the only thing that changed in the entire universe was that one evening I called that woman unto me and I loved her for less than a minute. So when something changed inside me, this is basic metaphysics, folks. The outer reflects the inner. You cannot make a change in the inner without getting a change in the outer. And certainly forgiveness is the most powerful way to make a change in the outer. It undoes 1,000 years of trouble Jesus has promised us. So, that's one of the best lessons in the entire course. If you do today's lesson properly, you're going to save yourself 1,000 years of suffering. Now, what a promise is that? Ooh, let me jump on that bandwagon.
Right. Yeah, maybe to answer that question, our discussion quite a bit. We all our egos, okay, share an illusion. We have a shared illusion. We all see the sun rise in the east, see it set in the west. We all see that physical space-time continuum stuff together, okay. We all see the same thing, okay. But we each have individual perceptions. So when we look out upon a tragedy, we can feel all kinds of, or somebody does a heinous thing, we can see the guilt and we can see the fear and the hatred, all those negative emotions that, all derive from fear and guilt, or we could choose to join with the Holy Spirit and go with the Holy Spirit's judgment, which is either one or two things, as we know, a call for love, or an expression of love. So that's the individual perception that we can see out there, even though we're all seeing the sun rise in the east. So maybe that addresses that a little bit. As far as, the Course says it saves time. It saves, as Alan just mentioned, it saves 1,000 years, but it says over and over again, purpose of the Course is to save time. And I could have several references, but we won't get into all that. But I think we, look it up. I think we'll all agree that that's part of what it does. So maybe one way to look at it. Yeah, there's a script where it takes, of course, at one point, the undoing of the separation can take millions of years, or it can be immeasurably shortened if we choose to join the Holy Spirit. So maybe there's a script where, it takes 1,000,000 years because we don't, we just want to stay with the ego to the very bitter end. Or there's a script, where we can cut that time down by 90% because we choose to forgive at every turn. So thanks.
And I like that you say we choose to forgive at every turn, because I want to represent, certainly in my own experience, that every turn may still be another turn about the same situation. You may think you've forgiven in a single moment something, and then it can come around and bite you again, and you have another opportunity to do that. And the more that you do it, it doesn't mean that it won't come around again and again and again for another opportunity to see if you really meant it in that one instant. But the unfolding of healing is extraordinary. And I'll give one very humbling, almost embarrassing incident for me, where my father, who was my biological father, a very, very difficult man, and very abusive, verbally abusive, not physically abusive. And I went back to help care for him. And it was especially after my stepmom had died, he was particularly angry and taking out a lot on me. And I was very committed to going back and showing him love and showing him love and showing him love. And he always called, my mother's world, that stuff, or woo-woo, or that book that she does. And he always called it the Book of Miracles, like the Book of Mormon, instead of A Course in Miracles. But I keep showing up in love to this man, and it got so abusive. And I come home back to California, he was in New York, a wreck, and people would say, why are you going? Why would you go? And I just would say, because I choose to see him in love. It's my lesson, and I want to be complete with him, and I want to be guilt-free on my end when he goes. So lo and behold, a few months before he passed, he had this extraordinary dream. And he woke up from the dream, and instead of going into it with you all, he said, "Oh my God, I realized last night I had a dream that lasted the whole night, and it taught me that you and your mother are right. It's all about love." And in the next few months, he would say, "Hi, darling. Hi, sweetheart. How are you?" His last words to my partner while he was on his deathbed is there anything I can do for you, Peter? And I'm thinking, who is this man? And then I get angry. Instead of like, yay, dad finally woke up. It was like, how dare you, after 90 something years of being a jerk, suddenly right in there, get under the wire right before you go and go, "I'm a great guy. Everybody love me." And it was so remarkable for me to see, like, I'm going to remember your bad stuff. What I was holding on to, even though my choice was to see him in love, my dedication was to see him in love, but it was a little bit of martyr love. And, I had to go through the layers until I got to forgive myself, which was long after he passed, to really forgive him, to forgive levels that I had not forgiven when I was just focused on, I'm going to see you as love, no matter what you're saying to me. So there can be, not always, there can be many levels that come up when you think you have been in that state of pure forgiveness, and you find out, oops, forgot that corner. And I just wanted to say that so that those who struggle with this, or think they got over something, or think that they've experienced that, don't feel bad in the least if other parts come up. It's the ego, and it will take many forms and be very slippery in many ways. So, Diane.
And adding to that, sometimes when you really think you've forgiven, you've had that experience of peace towards the other person, don't look to the other person's changing and becoming loving as necessary to owning your own healing. But be honest with yourself. If they continue to be very difficult, be honest with yourself that you are continuing to heal. That's your only job. What anybody else does, that's what they're working out. And it is lovely when you have a shift in mind, and so, cause and effect in heaven happen immediately. Cause and effect here sometimes happen immediately, and it's a great stroke, but it doesn't always. This is about becoming gentle with yourself as you become more honest.
Yeah. The goal of forgiveness should never be to affect a change in the other person's behavior. The only goal is to affect a shift in your perception. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. And we can fool ourselves sometimes when we think also in a role that we're being the good, loving one, as the other person is not. When and then you have to, if you choose, you can choose to release those layers of having seen him as the bad one and yourself as the good one.
And Selena, just to go back to your question, I think the inference of the question was that the time of awakening is written. It's written because it already happened. But if we take nothing else away from it, it's in every moment, I can join that moment and reflect it here, not as a goody two-shoes, but because it feels so good when I'm willing to do it. It's not like we're waiting for someone to give it to us. It's already here. We're choosing not to see it, choose to let it in, choose to let go of this even momentarily, even if you grab it back.
Thank you, Diane. Anybody else? Lasting thoughts, words, comments?
I want to honor the foundation for continuing the work. I discovered the course in 1980, and it's changed my life. And obviously a lot of the founders have gone on, but I really thank and respect all of you for continuing the webinars and the translations. The more I see of the course, the more holy I recognize it is, and I see how it changes so many lives. So I want to just humbly stand and honor all of you who are keeping the work going through the foundation. Thank you.
Thank you too so much. And, I'd love to take this opportunity for any of you to say what you're doing to keep the course going too. I know I'm going to turn to Diane first on this because she's been teaching a class, and I was told that are you doing one more, Diane?
We're just ending up a class on the text, which because of COVID, I wound up doing on Zoom and wound up lecturing for an hour and a half. And I promised Spirit I would do it, and we're almost finished. And I'm never doing that one again. You are all witness. However, in September, I will start up another Zoom class, but we will do it as an interactive reading and read and response. This is my reaction to this, or I don't understand this, or this is what's going on in my life. There's no way it applies, but we will start up a class in the beginning of September. If anybody is interested, I'd be delighted to get your email. So email me.
Will that be in the chat or somewhere?
No, I probably won't see the chat, but you can email me at Diane@acim.org. That would be great. And I'll put you on a mailing list, and you'll hear about it at the end of August.
Great. And the Allens?
Alan?
Okay, so I'll go first.
First,
So,
before
yeah.
you even go first, I want to thank you because you do extraordinary volunteer work for the foundation, and it's so appreciated. So I know you gave a little plug earlier, which we don't really, we've chosen not to give plugs, but I think we're much more casual these days, and I really like, we're not sponsoring people, we're just delighting in people and what they're doing in the course.
Right. So yeah, that's that's what I do. I'm a foundation volunteer, of course, but my specific role is I'm one of the admins on the foundation's large Facebook group. Again, we have about 23,000 members, along with my co-moderator admins, Ardith and Johanna. So we have a great time with the group, and if you're on Facebook, you like groups, I encourage you to come on in. We have a lot of very knowledgeable members there with varying perspectives and a lot of great discussion in a civil environment that we created. Emmanuel founded the group, set up some great guidelines in the very beginning that this will be a group where we discuss things and not fight. Okay, and if you do, we're not going to do that. So, and Emmanuel transitioned recently, and certainly the Facebook group is one of her important legacies that she left. So.
Thank you for that. She transitioned 2 weeks ago, and we are sending her all the gratitude and love as we walk in gratitude with her.
For me, this is less of a plug and more of a celebration of the course. In the fall, I started 3 ACIM teacher trainings, one in the US, one in Japan, and one in India. And they were all experiments. And I thought, well, how am I going to teach all these people the course in 3 different cultures? What I'm discovering is that the course works and that it teaches itself. And I've been literally blown away. Japan and India are different cultures than ours, obviously different languages. They really get it. Even though the language is different, even though it's a Western mindset, they get it, and their lives are changing by practicing the Course in Miracles. So I've been kind of laying back and, well, thank God I don't have to figure out how they're going to learn the Course. They're doing the Course works, and it's doing the work for itself. So I think just give people a little head start and encourage them and love them, and they're off and running. The Course is a self-edifying, self-healing structure that manifests miracles because that's what it is.
Thank you. What I found out, and I found it out specifically through many of the Japanese students, that they are seemingly, from what I've heard now, they're the group who most take the Japanese translation and the English and go page to page in their studying of it, which I find fascinating. It's a really good way to decide whether the translation speaks well to you, as some people are not familiar with the fact that the Foundation's translations are a process and they get revised continually as the course meets you on whatever level you are. As the longer you do and practice the course, you see things in a different way. And so the English stays the English forever, as we are committed to this version of it. The translations are ever evolving to meet and match the English as best as they can. And it really depends on the readiness and the depth of the student's understanding, or the translator, I should say, is understanding. So that's interesting. Thank you. Okay, well, anything else, Selena?
I think we're ready to close if everyone feels complete.
Yes, thank you all for joining us. This has been really especially fun for me. I love hearing and getting involved with all these discussions about this, because it really does deepen my own learning in this. Thank you.
Can we just have a moment of intention and prayer that everybody who's participating live or watching the recording really receive the depth of the message, and that the beauty and healing power and magnitude of the Course really touches all of our lives and moves us to make it real in our experience, and really raise in consciousness so we sincerely experience the happy dream. That's my prayer for everybody who's watching live or to the video.
Thank you. And may the happy dream be the most wonderful narration you could ever have seen, scripted or planned.
Let's take a moment.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. All the hearts are going up, the little heart emojis on the screen. So I'll give my friend Jim here a chance to get the PowerPoint up. Thank you, everyone who's joined us today. Oh, look at all those heart emojis. Okay. I think we're ready to close. Jim, I'll let you share. While the music is going up, just letting you all know we're pasting a link in the chat. It's a brief survey to get some feedback on A Course in Miracles app that the Foundation is developing. So we'd love to have your feedback. So please select the link if you would like to give us feedback and complete that survey. Deborah will put it in the chat. Thank all of our guests for this discussion and all of the attendees who are joining us today. And we appreciate you all. Stay tuned for next month's web events, which will be announced soon. If you subscribe to our webinar announcements, you will be getting an email. So you can always check in on our website's events page, but feel free to email us at discuss@acim.org. With love and gratitude, thanks for being here, and we look forward to having you again soon.